And the big headline after Thursday Night Football, Dolphins QB Tua Tagovailoa was carted off the field against the Bengals last night after being slammed to the ground late in the second quarter. He was taken to the hospital with head and neck injuries and was released after the game, traveling back to Miami on the team plane. So that injury comes just 4 days after Tua was evaluated for a concussion against the Bills. This is the latest in just a long list of injuries for Tua. Now, Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel is live at the podium right now in South Florida, and we do want to listen
in. How is Tua feeling based on your discussions with him last night and today? And do you have the MRI results yet?
So he was, I think that his teammates or me, I'm not sure who was most excited to see him on the plane, and he was honest about the fact that he had a headache, but his personality was definitely normal Tua. And then talking to him this morning, I think he's still feeling some of those headaches, and he's 12. I think he's probably just finishing his MRI right now, and so we'll find the results in that. That's just an extra kind of precaution on top of the CT scans and the X-rays that were taken last night.
Mike, I know, because obviously you could look at Stephen Carter and say concussions affect everybody differently. Is there a chance you guys maybe put Tua on the short-term IR just as a precaution?
Well, I mean, honestly, to be completely forthright, I'm not even really thinking about timetables or anything regarding him as a player right now. It's all about really Tua the person. That's the, what gets lost in all this is there's human relationships. That these aren't just creative players. These are people that we mutually invest in, and somebody I've grown very, very close to. And so when it comes to head injuries and concussions, with things that severe, it's not the only thing I'm worried about is the person first. So we're just worrying about him getting healthy, getting all the testing done that he needs to get done, and us working with him so that we can feel good about where that injury's at, and then we'll cross the bridge in terms of timetables of however long. Really haven't even thought about that at this point.
Last night you said, when you were asked about if you would do anything differently, you said no chance, pretty much. Now that you've had time to reflect, is there anything either you would have done differently or you wish any of the medical personnel would have done differently dating back to the original hit on Sunday against the Bills?
I appreciate all that, all the concern, really, just because I care about the guy, and I appreciate all the concern for the individual. What I was kind of referring to in terms of not changing anything I'd do is because the whole process for what happened on the Bills game was, he was evaluated for a head injury immediately. That's what we brought him under the tent for and brought him inside for. He was evaluated and then cleared by several layers of medical professionals who I don't pretend to be one, but those people, the collection of them, cleared him of any head injury whatsoever, and he had a back and ankle issue. So in terms of deciding whether or not to play a guy on a Thursday night game, I'm concerned about his lower back and his ankle and putting him in harm's way. I have 100% conviction in our process with regarding our players, this is a player-friendly organization that, I make it very clear from the onset. My job as a coach is here for the players. I take that very serious, and no one else in the building strays from that. So when I'm talking about deciding whether or not to play, the only thing that would keep me from playing him would be something going against medical advice that was that would be just completely abstract. On top of all that, I had no worries whatsoever with how he, I'm in steady communication with this guy day in, day out, and we're talking about high-level football conversations about progressions and defenses and recalling stuff from 2 weeks previous, and then him having to reiterate a 15-word play call. All things, absolutely no signs, nothing. There was no medical indication, from all resources that there's anything regarding the head. So if there would have been, of course, if there would have been anything lingering with his head, I wouldn't have been able to live with myself if I prematurely put someone out there and put them in harm's way. This is a relationship that I have with this human being, so I take that serious, and I wouldn't have put him out there if there was any inclination given to me whatsoever that he was endangering himself from that previous game.
Coach, have you talked to last night on the plane? You had conversations with Tua, I presume, and you said he brought his personality with him. Yeah. Can you elaborate for us on?
Yeah, well,
what he did he talk about the incident itself?
We just wanted to get him a little more space. He came up and sat next to me on the flight, and we talked a little bit about the game. I kind of was asking him questions about how he was feeling, and that happened for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then he pulled out his phone and started playing my cult favorite classic movie, MacGruber, that he watched, and was like laughing with me. And he, I think he was just happy to be with his teammates, and all of his teammates were so elated. I mean, this was a scary, scary situation for all of us. I'm sure you could tell by the way that his teammates' body language and everyone that was on the field, and it was something that did not just go away once the game restarted. So all of his teammates were absolutely elated to see him on the field or on the plane. He was elated, brought him some joy, which was good to see. Is one of the reasons you get into team sports.
Mike, you mentioned the human element of it. Can you describe maybe the last 12 hours for you, for your team, just kind of dealing with all of this?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you recognize is part of my job. So I kind of for me, I don't do anything without being extremely accountable and hard on myself. So I can say with conviction certain things because I go back and I make sure that the due diligence was that I've done everything correctly, whether or not with all the information given. Football is a unique sport. It's one of the reasons we love it. Is there's so much unpredictability and so many variables. It's also one that's violent and can have injuries, and you really comb all things that come across your plate to make sure that you're doing right by everyone involved, specifically and most importantly and non-negotiably the human beings, the players, and to the point that I'm thinking about the play call. I'm thinking about all of this stuff. And it's hard, but I recognize that it's an important part of the job, that you don't get to dictate circumstances, and you're supposed to you need to help lead individuals to be a team. And I mean, you never want to. I don't know. I don't think I'll ever be comfortable. I'll ever get used to. It will never feel normal for me personally, and the type of person I am, that I know you guys are just starting to learn, is I'll never be comfortable with a player getting carted off the field. Ever.
All right, head coach Mike McDaniel discussing Tua's injury. So we do want to welcome back our NFL insider, Justina Anderson, to break all of this down. So, Justina, first up, what are your main takeaways from Mike McDaniel's presser right there?
Well, it's obvious the head coach of the Miami Dolphins has, a kinship and closeness with his quarterback and Tua, and I don't think anybody questions that. Nor does anybody think that the head coach would do anything intentional to put Tua in harm's way. But one of the things that he said that really stood out to me was that he said that, doctors and the medical professionals immediately cleared Tua of any head injury after the game in Miami Gardens against the Bills. And the reason why that stands out to me is because anybody that knows anything about head injuries is that that symptoms may not immediately show. So the use of the word immediately is what stands out to me. And I know that obviously Mike McDaniel's job is to be the head coach of that organization. He's not a doctor. But to me, it just reflects a little bit of not having a full understanding of the scope or the gamut of symptoms that one can show even after the fact. And the fact that he also mentioned that, Tua was on some sort of tablet playing a game that has, potential bright lights coming from it, while riding home from the game in Cincy is not necessarily something that I believe, one who potentially has a concussion should be doing relative to potentially having incurred a head injury. And I'm just saying that from, again, what I described in the previous segment, from having had a concussion myself, as far as what I've been told, from medical experts with regards to that possible diagnosis. So that's, to me, is what is concerning. Not that he just used the word immediately and saying that he was cleared, but that also involved, per what he said, medical professionals participating in that clearance. And so the question then becomes, is this perhaps a rush to judgment just within the Miami Dolphins organization? Does the protocol overall need to be amended, which is something that JC Treader just expressed on Twitter just now as a representative of the NFLPA, in terms of just expressing the extreme outrage that they have as an organization that is basically assembled to look over the well-being of its players and its membership. That, in his words, there were plenty of no-go symptoms that were evident that is embedded in this protocol that, from his perspective, were not followed. And it's just like something that I tweeted on Twitter and social media the other night, was that, sometimes your eyes tell you what your eyes tell you. And regardless of whether Tua incurred a back and or ankle injuries at that game, it doesn't mean that it doesn't include an and. It could be and a head injury that, may not fully express itself until later, let alone what the potential long-term impacts can be of the hit against the Bills and also against the Bengals. Now, I mentioned in the previous segment that I was here in town to do a interview with Cam Newton. And one of the things that he said at that interview was that, per his experience, and I know he had, that one injury where it looked like he was concussed, I believe in the game against the Saints. And I was actually at that game where sometimes you experience a concussion and then, it can feel like the second and third one, happen more easily after that. So there's a lot of different ways people, can incur a head injury, and it's expressed differently in others. As JC Tretter mentioned in his statement, there's not a definitive diagnostic tool to say this is what you have. They use a variety of symptoms to make that assessment and how the player responds to different evaluations. But, the fact that there was immediate clearance after, what just looks like obvious evidence of something being wrong, regardless if it's a full-fledged concussion or not, I think what people are calling for here is that the overall response should be to err on the side of caution and not be concerned, presumably, about playing in a primetime game against the Buffalo Bills or Thursday Night Football against the Cincinnati Bengals.
All right, that's our NFL insider, Josina Anderson. Thank you so much, Josina. Mike McDaniel saying that Tua expressed a headache when they saw him on the plane back to Miami, still sensing a headache today, and an MRI is ongoing. Taking a look at the Dolphins' schedule coming up next, they do have that matchup against the Jets. That is Sunday on October 9th at 1 p.m.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.